for an artist to talk directly about the work. Okay? But what you can do is talk around it in one of the elements that I've inculcated or tried to pinch or whatever is the language of what we might call naive, I guess, although there's all sorts of untaught, whatever that means, childlike, yep, I'd be happy with that. So there's the whole kind of thing is a mishmash of how do we then bring all that together in some form, and that's what I'm trying to talk about. I think this is a great piece of writing, and of course John Berger, I don't know if you know John Berger's writing, and he was a pretty extraordinary character in art history. The silence after a felled tree has fallen is like the silence immediately after a death. Even when working in the forest alone, one has the elusive sense of company. A flat field, a bare hillside, or a steep are not the same. The trees continue a presence. They maintain, each according to each species, an extraordinary balance between movement and stillness, between action and passivity. Trees offer man the measure of his upright space, and in this offer, mysteriously still present today as I fill up the chainsaw with petrol, there is the discreetest assurance in the world that we never have been utterly alone. So in the exhibition here, all small works were started on site, plein air, if you like. Now, historically, painting landscapes outside is a relatively new thing in the Western canon. A couple of artists within that time, instead of using the landscape as the background for the Mona Lisa or something, they actually went out into the landscape, sat down, looked, and tried to paint pictures of it. And they could do that because the Renaissance had brought up, they invented perspective, and they could use this system. Okay, so you got that. And that has been so crucial in the Western thinking. However, those landscapes I think of mostly were watercolour or gouache and watercolour and not colour initially. Colour was a problem because when you used a lot of bright colour, it jumped out and you were trying to create some kind of distant space. Segue back to these things. These are all done on site. Most of these ones here, these are all done on site. These ones are probably the most recent ones that I've resolved, I think is the term I might use. And they were basically came out of 2 or 3 days sitting in this extraordinary place in the east, McDonald's, and this is a place called Ross River. I was so besotted with it. So it's really a response to sitting in a dry riverbed, and because dry riverbeds in European art history, well, there are not many dry riverbeds because there's always water running in it. So they are done on the site. They usually come back in 3 lots. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? The good ones may stay good because they work pretty much straight up. Couple of them. The in-between ones, they kind of work, but not quite. And then the bad ones are really get chucked out or burnt. Well, or sometimes they look the more interesting thing than you started with the good ones. So that's the problem. There's this kind of paradox between the making and the final kind of result. But having said that, because the big ones, I can't do them outside, and it wouldn't work the same anyway. But painting a picture outside, finishing a picture outside, is really only came into, in the West anyway, from Cézanne. The beauty of what he did was went out and painted and finished the picture so he could look at the landscape and look at the painting and make that thing somehow that but not that at the same time. The big ones, people often ask me how that works, and I know that without going and being in the landscape, I couldn't do that. I used to think I had a good memory, you see, that was the problem. I used to think I had a good memory and I'd go to a place and think, oh, that'll make a great picture. Wonderful old girls, the Indigenous girls, and they were talking about their mother's country, long, 800 k's away. And in that, in painting, they could bring it back. And in song. And so goes to the whole thing of memory and how one deals with it, and certainly intellectually at one level and also just intuitively another, helped me kind of work out, okay, how do I make a painting where I stand in front of it? Luckily for me, some of this has come together. Some of the spontaneity in that comes into that. Some of the compositional understanding in that comes into that spontaneity. And so these things are slowly coming closer together, if that makes sense. Okay. So I came across seriously great pictures. So that was one thing. The shock of looking at a great picture and realising, you can't do that yet. You know, the first experience of Van Gogh, I was doing an interview recently and they wanted to know, you know, what were those early experiences like. But the first one of a Van Gogh, although I'd seen reproductions of course, but going to the National Gallery in London, not really looking for anything particular, just going in to look, and seeing a Van Gogh for the first time. But the experience of that, the presence of that picture, was both exhilarating, I'm still trying to find the language for it, exhilarating and scarring, because I realised for a moment what a great picture could be. I realised the effrontery nearly of these nearly crude and extraordinary marks. I realised that this was something that great paintings do, and I realised that I couldn't do it yet. That was a long way off, maybe. And that humiliation was a long start of rethinking how I responded to paintings, how I made them. She uses the term active surrender. So they are two put together by someone who knows words, but she obviously realises that she's put them together because they are somewhat contradictory or ambiguous. Okay? And that is part of the process of how I think great pictures work, and it's also part of the process that I go through trying to respond to my own work as it happens. Okay, and I'm very conscious too that the works are about a transcendence of the real world as well as a reverence for it or something. I knew the thing I was interested in was the landscape. My dad was a forest officer, we'd been lots in the bush. I knew that's where I wanted to be. And so the first works were just kind of bad Fred Williams or bad Sid Nolan or bad Albert Tucker remakes or whatever. And what I did was because I was interested in printmaking, I used to do quite a lot of monoprints, so I set up a system that I could do monoprints in the bush, which is a hazard, really. You've got ink and roller, flies, ants, things that flopped on your face. But what it did was gave me a different way into the landscape. I've also started to think about the white as part of the picture, as a colour in the picture, as part of the composition. Because historically, it's always, if you've got a black and white work, particularly drawing, and Berger talks about this really brilliantly. He says, look, here's the drawing, and you make a series of marks on it which creates the illusion of space. Sometimes deep illusionistic space, way back in the hills or cathedrals, or sometimes quite shallow space. And you're making that space, and you're conscious of those things in that space. But the thing that you're not conscious of is that the white paper at the back is the same piece of white paper at the front. I mean, the thing is a complete illusion, isn't it? Picasso said the whole thing is a series of lies that tells the truth. And again, he's trying to grapple with this ambiguity, this near contradiction. But when you're doing that, it transcends just the picture, if it's any good, to some. It asks other questions of the viewer and certainly of the artist. And Raquel is here, who's been putting this up, and I've just been watching some of the things she showed you. Kids making art, and she teaches in a wonderful, wonderful way. And I'm looking at all these images, and I think, man, that's a freedom that I've spent my whole life getting to that point. And kids can do it intuitively. Some artists do it intuitively as well. The trouble is, for me, once you know stuff, you can't not know it.
Yeah.
Right? So knowing that, you've got to knowingly try to not know it.
Yeah.
Does that sort of make no sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, well that's painting. If I was trying to say to someone what I'm trying to do at one level, all the heroes that I've had historically in art, I've just been to an exhibition of Philip Guston, big retrospective, one of my great heroes. And what Guston was able to do is take this thing, his painting, abstract expressionist kind of background, beautiful, well constructed.
Very profitable.
Yeah, all that. Bringing that in with a kind of art that wasn't art, which was cartoons. So in American language, what he did was elevate a non-language, or what was it we call it? In American stuff it would be lowbrow, and made it highbrow, and saw it as a language, and remade it. So those things, several things came together to make a new amalgam. If I think that's what I'm doing, and have been doing for a while now, is trying to, anyway, bring together all that whole Western canon, thinking, writing, with Indigenous thinking about how we see the land, how we understand it, and therefore how you make pictures of it.